Most of the people wamezoea kwenda mortuary, unaenda una pick body, unaenda mkienda kuzika watu. But hiyo si worst ya kwenda kuzika. The worst thing ni kwenda kutafuta.
It's really frightening. At night you go home and you wonder even whether you can sleep. You don't get sleep, but not even for a second.
There needs to be a follow-up to sort of debrief, give them a psychological first aid.
Since the protest, the Nairobi City Mortuary is flocking with people. It is quickly becoming one of the most frequented places in this part of town. I have been coming to this place to cover horrific tales, and every day I'm here, faces of despair seem to multiply. And every face, trauma and distress. It's on a Friday, and more families are streaming in. Some are here to look for their missing kin, while others have a date with the pathologists to follow the post-mortem. Others are organizing where to bury their loved ones.
Even for a journalist covering this story, it's tough to face families that are looking for closure, families that are seeking answers that cannot be provided for.
Just as Moseti has been queuing up, waiting for his turn to view the remains of his sister, 20-year-old Lillian Nyaboke's mutilated body was discovered here a week ago. Today, Justus is too weak and has asked his neighbor to accompany him. His sister went missing at the height of the protests, but the search ended here. It is tough to imagine what is going through his mind.
Wakati tuligundua yuko, tukajaribu kuweka maposters, tukaripoti vituo mbalimbali, sehemu za Ruiru, kila mahali, akakosekana. Wakati tuliweka posters, ndio watu wakaanza kusema enda mtafute city moja kwanza, mnasapata ama mkoze.
Moseti is among scores of families who've had to visit every possible morgue in the city to search for their missing kin. He tells me that he has had to see some of the most graphical images he's ever encountered in his life.
Kukuja city moja, tukaonezwa mili mingi, nyingine hata huwezi jua, unaruka mili ingine imekatakatwa, ingine imesha hata huwezi jua. Sasa kwa sababu sisi tuko na haja ya kutafuta mwenzetu, tuone kama tutampata, ikabidi sasa tuingie tu, hata kama nguvu iko, bora tu tupate mpendo wetu.
Sources at the Nairobi City Mortuary say at one given time, the morgue can hold as many as 1,000 bodies, and this is the number of bodies sometimes you need to view just to find a loved one.
He's one of the professors.
Clinical psychologist Muare Mothaura deals with grief-stricken families on a daily basis. She knows what it takes to go through this kind of trauma.
What's going on for most people is shock, numbness, what we'd call an acute stress reaction. So you'll see shock, numbness, confusion, incoherence, dizziness, some cognitive impairment where their memory is failing them. They have memory gaps in that they do not remember what happened. Some people go to the morgue, we've seen this on the screens. They've gone to the mortuary and then passed out. You can't understand what they're saying, they're screaming, they're wailing, but hours later they don't remember. They'll start asking you, where's my son? As if they didn't identify the body. So the series of events happens rather quickly for something you're unprepared for, and then you're unable to compute.
Tabitha Moneki hit the headlines when her only son Joseph Mwangi went missing a month ago. She has also had to visit every possible station and morgue to find her son. Although her story has a happy ending with her son resurfacing, the trauma of visiting the morgues still lingers.
Ile kitu tumepitia for all that almost 1 month. Siwezi omba mzazi mwingine apitie kitu kama hiyo. Ni ngumu sana. Juu ukienda kulala usingizi huwezi pata. Juu unajiuliza umelala mtoto wako wako aje. Na ile kitu ilikuwa inawasen hizi mambo ni venye mambo ya maandamano. So uko unajua kama mtoto alienda maandamano, yeye ni kijana mdogo, hamjaongea na yeye na simu akwambie kama ameenda. So sasa from there when tulianza kutafuta police station zote hatukumpata. Tulienda police station zote zenye ziko area ya Nairobi hatukumpata. Tukaenda sasa tukaanza mahospitali, kwa sababu hospitali tulienda Kenyatta, KU, St John, zote hospitali Mama Lucy zote tulienda. Baadhi wenye tuliona atupati usaidizi atumpati huko. Sasa ikaikuwa ni kwenda mortuary. The worst thing. The worst experience. Mimi nimezoea ama most of the people wamezoea kwenda mortuary, unaenda una pick body. Unaenda mkienda kuzika watu. But hiyo si worst ya kwenda kuzika. The worst thing ni kwenda kutafuta. Hujui kama mtu amekufa. So unaenda kuangalia bodies, naambiwa uangalie hii, ni kwa the worst thing. Tulipitia uchungu mingi.
Nilishikiwa Githurai 45. Nilikuwa natoka job size jioni. So tukashikwa tukablindfoldiwa. So kutoka hapo sijui pia tulipelekwa. Nilikuwa na wasiwasi. Mimi ni binadamu, nilikuwa nasikia, nilikuwa najua story yangu imeisha. Nikiachiliwa bado ilikuwa tu hivyo, niliblindfoldiwa nikatolewa place tulikuwa tumewekwa. Then nikaachiliwa hapo Muthaiga.
Many we've spoken to say the government has failed to extend psychosocial support for families dealing with this ordeal. We've been here for a couple of hours today and only noticed this tent run by Kenya Red Cross offering a support program for families. But it's not enough compared to the number of people trooping here.
Before we take family members to look for their bodies, we need to go through a series of counseling events, even though it's very brief, where you talk to the family like we would before we tell you someone is going to die in the hospital or somebody has died. There's a counseling process that goes on, and it is very, very calm, in which, we present some of the facts of what happened. We walk you through what you might see. We ask you if there's anything you need. We try to provide basic things. So first of all, I think checking how you're doing physically and mentally, preparing you for what you're about to see, right? Offering you some privacy, offering confidentiality, not just exposing you to everything, right? Looking for age-appropriate counseling. So there's a way the vulnerable groups would be the children and the elderly especially. And then after identification, there needs to be a follow-up to sort of debrief, give them psychological first aid.
And it's not just the families. Hussein Khalid, the human rights defender, has attended every single autopsy for victims of the recent unrest.
In the last 2 or 3 weeks, what we have witnessed as human rights activists really cannot even be described, because we have witnessed a lot of death. And not just death, but death that happened in a very gruesome manner. If you look at, for instance, the protest victims, we have cases of people who had their heads blown off. We have cases of people who have had multiple organ failures. We have cases of blunt force trauma where the skull was fractured. And if you put all that together with what we've also seen in Kware, bodies dismembered, half of the body in a different sack from the other half.
Hussein tells me that sometimes it takes a toll.
It's really frightening. At night you go home and you wonder even whether you can sleep. You don't get sleep, but not even for a second, because these images keep playing themselves out in your mind.
Simon Kosgei is too shaken to speak. He tries to stay positive, but suspects that his missing daughter could be among the bodies discovered at an abandoned quarry in Mukuru, Kwanjenga. He's had to view the gory images, but has not identified his daughter yet. Every day that passes without finding her is another day of misery.
Maiti ambao wamepatikana hapa si maiti ambao walikuwa wako kamili. Wengine walikuwa ni vichwa, wengine ilikuwa ni mwili nusu, na kwa mtu ambaye hajazoea kuingia katika mochari na kuweza kuangalia maiti, kuona kwa mara yake ya kwanza aina hii ya maiti ni kitu ambacho kinaleta utatanishi mkubwa sana. Kitu ambacho sisi kama watetezi wa haki za kibinadamu tunacholilia ni kwamba serikali mbali na kufanya uchunguzi hawajaweza kuweka mbinu mwafaka ambayo itaweza kuangazia masuala ya kisaikolojia. Hawajaweza kuweka team ya counselors ama washauri ambao watakuwa hapa kuwa prepare family kabla hawajakuja ku-identify bodies za wapendwa wao.
The proliferation of social media has also complicated matters for families. Social media has seen the circulation of gory images of people killed in the protests. Some families have had to learn the passing of their kin on these platforms.
I always tell people, before you even circulate something on WhatsApp or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, issue a trigger warning or an alert where you let people know this will be sensitive and you really do not have to look at it. You can bypass it, or you can leave the room, or you can turn off your TV for 5 minutes, because not everybody is ready to look at that.
Bodies from the quarried dump site in Mukuru are yet to be identified. Some families have traveled from far-flung towns to be here, and days on, they are yet to get answers. Kenyan officials received backlash for subjecting members of the public to lead the exercise of retrieving bodies at the quarried dump site. Police just watched from a distance as young men went down to pick decomposed bodies. Even today, no one has cared to offer psychosocial support for these men who risked their lives. I have been interviewing those who retrieved the bodies, like this man.
Shimo yenyewe iko na mauchafu. Watu kulingana vile tu wamefungwa, tumeona tu wamewekwa kwa magunia, ndani ni polythene papers na wananuka mbaya. Sijui hawajauliwa hivi karibuni. Wamekatakatwa katikati hapa hivi. Waste. Ndio mtu atoshie kwa gunia afungwe. Hakuna mtu tumetoa akiwa mzima.
Dealing with the short-term and the long-term impacts of this trauma can be devastating for those going through this.
I like this book about trauma.
Clinical psychologist Mware Muthaura has some top tips. Consider self-care. Care for your mind, body, and soul. For example, engaging in hobbies. Limit your access to social media and negative news. Establish routine and keep it going. Seek community support. Seek professional support. Step back from the protests if it takes a toll. Back at the city mortuary, these families, although broken, have one priceless bond. They only have each other for comfort and courage. They once lived in a peaceful, harmless country. That is the kind of world they stand for and which they hope can return. Rebuilding will take time, but healing will take even longer. Francis Ontomwa, KTN News, Nairobi.